Hello, and welcome to Based on Facts, where fiction and superstition meet logic and scientific facts, on WELT 95.7 FM, broadcasting from the Allen County Public Library. My name is Chris Rex, and today we will be discussing what constitutes a natural way of life. Okay, because I hear this term being thrown around a lot recently, especially in the past few years, as far as what is natural for humans. You know, as far as what we should be eating, the things that we should be doing, and essentially just ways to kind of go back to the way that we should be, so to speak. I think a lot of people have this kind of nostalgia, that the modern city environment, the urban environment, we surround ourselves with metal and plastic and all these modern things, technology and electronics. And I think a lot of people are becoming a little bit nostalgic and really wanting to go back to, being more nature oriented and seeing more green, kind of going back to less processed food, things that are more in their raw form, things of that nature, just to kind of go back to our roots, so to speak. No pun intended, of course. So I've seen this movement a lot lately, and you definitely see the abundance of all these different natural types of products on the market right now. In fact, you see a variety of labels that actually say, oh yeah, this is natural, made with natural ingredients, or things that are environmentally friendly, no added preservatives or chemicals or whatever. You see all these different stickers on things when you go shopping, and you just start thinking, well, does any of it actually mean anything? Because it's one thing to claim that natural is natural. It's an entirely different thing to claim that natural is better in some way. And so that's where I really start to have issue with it, is when people start to take that kind of direction, that natural always means better. So let's analyze that for a second. What is natural? Let's just break that down. Well, really, if we're talking about humans, we are living organisms, okay? And so from a broad perspective, what's natural is for living organisms to be not living anymore, okay? Which is to say, non-living factors or abiotic factors like rocks. That's what we should be. That's what's natural, is rocks. Because when we look around in the universe, we see a lot of rocks and gas. We don't see any other life as of this moment when it comes to the universe. We have yet to find another planet with life forms on it. And so that leads us to believe that life is pretty special, and that what's natural is the ending of that life. Whether that be by an asteroid or some global calamity otherwise, it's natural for this planet not to have life in the first place. So that's just as an aside. Normally people don't even remotely consider that when they consider natural, so we're just gonna kind of move forward from there. But what's interesting is that when you look at the universe, you see a lot of that randomness, okay? And you see this urge to create that randomness, and we call that entropy, okay? And when it comes to life on this planet, entropy is always at work, all right? It is always trying to kill, essentially, anything that's living. We are on a daily struggle trying to survive, trying to maintain a balance between our bodies and the environment that is favorable to us remaining alive. So in this respect, we are really no different. We as humans are no different than any other life form on this planet. We're just struggling to survive day by day, trying to get our nutrients and trying to keep our bodies working effectively as a unit between all the different cells, the millions or billions of cells in our body, all working together as one unit. And so As such, we're not considered to be special. We're just another element in the ecosystem that we're present in. We're just one single element in this biosphere that we call planet Earth. As such, we have a role in this ecosystem, wherever you're at in particular. You have a role in that ecosystem, okay? And your role is really supposed to be a situation where it's a give and take, okay? You take from the environment around you, but you also give back to the environment around you. And you do this on a daily basis. Whether it's something simple like breathing, you are constantly exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide. And every time you do that, you're giving a plant something that it needs to survive. Whereas a plant is giving you the oxygen you need to survive. So that's part of our daily exchange. We do that. You can even think about things like what you do every morning and night, I'm sure. Go to the restroom and urinate or defecate, and that's your deposit to the environment. Because other things like bacteria and such can take those materials and break them down and use them for energy. That's part of what we're giving back to the environment. But really our role extends beyond that. Okay, when we look at any other animal in any other ecosystem, you see they have a very intricate web of connections to a variety of other organisms at all trophic levels. Which is to say, we are affecting organisms at the bacterial level, all the way up to the level of, let's say, like a lion. All right. So we have a role and a duty in these environments to kind of exchange some of our energy and resources with a number of other organisms, whether it be in a direct fashion or a more indirect fashion. So when we kind of consider that, we have to think about how we enter into the equation. Because really, technically, we should be happy to give our lives to a lion, to help feed that lion. Because we're fulfilling our natural role in the environment. Okay? When you think about bacterial infections, you are providing energy for that bacterium to survive and to replicate and to thrive. So you should be happy that you're fulfilling that role in the environment, that you are giving a part of yourself so that another organism can survive and thrive. Funny enough, when people think about what's natural for humans, they don't normally consider those things to be part of natural. You normally don't have people lining up to offer or sacrifice themselves to the lions so they can, feel like they're more of a part of the ecosystem. You normally don't have people going up and willingly getting parasitic infections just to say, hey, I'm harboring some worms in my intestines and in my heart. I feel great because I'm doing something good for the environment by supporting another life form in it. Nobody thinks like that. That's a little ridiculous to some degree. But you know what? That's what's natural. Every other organism on this planet does it. And humans in a variety of circumstances do it too. It's just we tend to call that a disease or a condition that we need to cure, right? So when you get sick with a cold, you're normally just thinking about how can I get rid of this cold. You're not thinking, oh, well, it's so great that I'm harboring these little viral particles in my body. No, you're not thinking that. You're thinking, how can I get rid of this and how can I survive? And that's what it comes down to, is that some of these interchanges with other organisms are so costly to us that they inhibit our ability to survive. Okay, they can be fatal in some instances, like I was saying with the lion. I don't have any faith in my chances of standing up to a lion. I'm pretty sure I'd be sliced into threads and would die very, very quick death. if I was ever to be in a situation with a lion that was wanting to eat me. So I'm pretty sure I'd be toast in that particular scenario. That's not to say that I would be happy or be jumping up at the opportunity to do such a thing, right? So it's those sorts of things that kind of start getting us in the direction of what's natural, okay? And really, when we consider all these different factors, it's natural for an organism to give and take with a lot of other organisms in its environment. So our duty as a human, technically speaking, is to participate in that give and take at all levels. To be food for other creatures, to be parasitized by other creatures, and to be infected by microorganisms. Okay? Those are our roles in the ecosystem. Technically speaking, ecologically speaking, those are our roles. Because that's the role of every other animal on this planet. Animal, plant. Sorry, sometimes I get a little speciesist and forget the plants, but the plants do engage in the exact same scenarios as well. Anyway, so let's break down, getting aside from all the big picture perspective kind of points here, let's narrow down what really is natural in a human's daily routine, so to speak. So, I wake up in the morning. I typically wake up to an alarm because I'm apparently a workaholic and I never get enough sleep anyway, so I've just given up by this point, averaging 3 hours of sleep a night. So I wake up by alarm, and not by a rooster crowing or the birds chirping. So that's kind of nice. I get to choose when I wake up. But that's not by any means natural. I'm using an electronic device that was devised using technology from science to wake my butt up in the morning. So just even from the get-go, I'm not utilizing natural means at all of living. Beyond that, we can talk about what I do immediately afterwards, which is get dressed. Theoretically speaking, we evolved from primates, which don't exactly wear clothes. Just about 99.9% of the time do not wear clothes. So we really don't need clothes per se, just because we evolved in a very warm environment in West Africa. Well, I guess not West Africa, that'd be East Africa actually. So East Africa, Middle East region, that's essentially where we evolved from. It's pretty warm there, so we really didn't need clothes per se, but they definitely really helped. So even when we talk about the nature of clothing that we use now as opposed to then, ancient humans would use things like leathers and hides as clothing. They wouldn't use these finely woven cloth materials, cloth and polyester and whatever, nylon. They wouldn't use all these materials. They didn't have access to them. They didn't have the technology to make these fine threads and weave together these fantastic garments that we can create today. They didn't have all that. They had very basic things that they basically carved off of an animal's back, treated it, and then decided to wear it to help protect them from the elements. And that's what helped humans spread from the Middle East out to other environments. Up north into Europe to where the temperatures were frigid, the northern reaches. Absolutely crazy how we can get to that stage where we can survive just because of designing clothing. Absolutely crazy. So the clothing that we use, nowhere close to being what it used to be. So not natural either. Additionally, we can talk about what I ate for breakfast, which, being the, once again, always in a rush kind of person that I am, it consists predominantly of Pop-Tarts. Okay, and I know Pop-Tarts are probably absolutely terrible for me as they're predominantly sugar, but I need calories in the morning, I need them now, so there it is, Pop-Tarts. Definitely nothing, not much natural in that either. Especially the fact that I use a toaster to toast said Pop-Tarts, and that is definitely a product of technology. So it's not natural either. Moving on, I can talk about how I add with my Pop-Tarts a glass of milk. Alright, we'll kind of talk about that later, but milk is not natural for humans to consume. Not by any means. In fact, most mammals have no business with milk after they are finished nursing. But we're kind of weird in that respect, and we'll talk more about that later. So, not natural there either. Then I go on to brush my teeth. Okay. Brushing my teeth is one of the priorities I've seen in my life, just to help prevent cavities and such. It seems that through my whole teeth brushing activities, I haven't really focused much on my gums. So I actually just went to the dentist 2 weeks ago and got diagnosed with gum disease. Kinda in the middle to late stages of it, so I'm kind of in some trouble there, and I need to remedy that situation as soon as possible. But brushing the teeth is not by any means a natural thing, nor does it involve any natural compounds at all, so completely unnatural there. Then I took a hot shower. So once again, it is natural for creatures to bathe, but not with hot water and not with fancy detergents. You know, we use very fancy soaps, you know, shampoos, conditioners, face wash, you know, all these different things to really help clean ourselves and make ourselves smell good. And none of that's natural, even in the slightest. Then I hop in my car and drive to work. Alright? Car, not even remotely natural. Even just putting on my shoes. I mean, the shoes that we use nowadays are nowhere close to being natural either. So there's that. Then, if you're one of these crazy people involved in this fad as of late, while you're at work, you can whip out your cell phone and start playing Pokemon Go in your downtime. I don't do that. I have no business with that game, but I hear from other people it's fun. So yeah, cell phone, video game, neither of those are even remotely natural either. Alright, so let's say I hit lunchtime at work here, and I go out for some fast food. Look at that, I can get food within 5 minutes. Alright, boom, get the food, get going, eat it. That is incredible to have that kind of ability. That kind of technology and culinary expertise to be able to do that is just incredible. Not even remotely natural in any possible way either. So there's that. You know, get back home from work, I sit down and I watch TV for a bit. Once again, I sit down on a couch. Okay, not even remotely natural. And I watch, once again, another product of technology, TV. Then I sit down and eat some microwave popcorn because I am literally obsessed with popcorn. Popcorn is my favorite food group. And the microwave is a handy, convenient way to cook it fast and easily. So none of that is natural. From even down to the corn that's used in the popcorn. Not a single bit of that is natural. The only thing I think is natural is the salt. And really that's not natural because it's iodized. So actually none of that is natural. And then I go to sleep at the end of the day by crawling into my nice, comfy, what is it, like 600 thread count sheets. Have a nice memory foam mattress. And it is in a soft bed that is elevated by a box spring a couple feet off the ground. And I get to wrap up and have a nice warm sleep. It's very, very, very comfortable. None of that is natural. And so when I hear people going on these natural stints, I really start to question what they think in their daily lives is natural. Because from what I just described, just a very vague description of my entire day, the only real activities I would consider to be natural would be things like urinating or defecating. Not in the manner that I do it, because I utilize a toilet, which is completely unnatural. So those things are pretty natural, just those acts. And then, of course, I take food and I put it into my mouth, and then I chew it, and then I swallow it. So maybe the fact that I still chew my food is still kind of natural. Otherwise, using utensils, plates, washing my hands, everything else related to food is not even remotely natural. Using toilet paper for when I'm actually using the restroom, that's not natural either. So I really question, when people go on these raves about natural, how many things do you do in your daily life are really natural? How many of them? Because I can't even count a handful of things I do that are truly considered to be natural. We are such a modern technological society now, at least here in the first world country, that it's hard to say what is exactly natural anymore, because so much of everything is unnatural, is artificial, because it makes life better, makes life more convenient, more comfortable, really just improves quality of life all around. And so it's really confusing to me to hear these people go on these rants about how great natural is, when they aren't doing a single natural thing in their entire day sometimes. It's really aggravating to me, I guess. So that's why we're kind of talking about this topic, because it's a topic that really doesn't seem to be very well understood by a lot of people. So let's get to the meat of the issue. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about this whole natural movement, they are talking about things that are natural food related. Okay, so they're encouraging more eating of raw potatoes as opposed to cooking them, slicing them up and making French fries out of them or whatever. Go for the more natural looking food and eat it, because it's more natural, and because it's less processed, and because it's a throwback to our roots and the way that humans evolved. So obviously it must be better for us. And well, that's not really the case. And so a lot of this conversation always comes back around to GMOs. I've already done an episode on GMOs, so I'm not going to cover much of that here. You can find that online if you wish. But when it comes down to GMOs, that it's normally put on one side of the spectrum, on kind of the negative side of the spectrum, and then we have on the other side of the spectrum organic foods, which are kind of praised as being these wonderful, awesome things that are once again a return to nature, a return to the natural way of cultivating and eating foods. And so we have those two things on opposite ends of the spectrum. GMOs being purportedly very, very bad and very processed, whereas organics are very natural and raw. So the question is, what's the differences really between these two different things? And when you really look at it, you see that organic foods have a number of things stacked up against them when you really start looking at the research that's done on these things. Alright, GMOs have been around for about the past 20 years or so, and we've been able to do a lot of studies comparing GMOs to organic foods. Of course, organic foods have really just blown up in the past, maybe 10 years. But even in that short amount of time, we can already tell that there are differences, vast differences, between GMOs and organics. And when we look at it, we see that GMOs are actually safer for us to eat all around. Okay, GMOs are held to higher safety standards than organic foods or conventional foods. Higher standards. And yet, for some reason, certain countries, certain states even, are trying to outlaw GMOs or have succeeded in outlawing GMOs, and just have such an amount of fear surrounding GMOs that they literally avoid it like the plague in some cases. It's like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Because when we look at the research, we see, oh my gosh, organic foods are recalled, which is to say that they discovered that something was wrong with the food, whether it was very likely to cause disease in people, or whether it had toxic substances in it, or substances at toxic levels in it. Organic foods are recalled 6 times more often than GMOs. So in the relatively short amount of time that GMOs and organic foods have been around, we've ascertained the simple fact that organics are 6 times more dangerous than GMOs are. That is an established fact. That is crazy to think about. You see all these people go on these organic food crazes. You sit back and you wonder, why would you do that if they're so much more dangerous? It's a proven fact. That blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. Especially when you consider the power of GMOs. Okay? There are a number of things in organic foods and in conventional foods that we don't want there. Okay? Certain compounds that are in these foods that cause higher rates of cancer. And you know what? That's the great thing with GMOs. We can isolate that one compound and remove it entirely just by looking at a single gene in that particular organism and removing it, or somehow splicing it out of the genome, essentially. So we're genetically modifying an organism so that it doesn't produce the dangerous thing. So look at that. GMOs have actually been proven to be safer to eat, not only because they have fewer recalls, but because we can take harmful substances out of the conventional or organic foods. And we've already seen that. Okay, we've seen that, actually an article I just read the other day looked at new potatoes that are being designed that don't have a certain compound in them that basically activates when it gets cooked to produce acrylamide. And acrylamide is carcinogenic. So if you eat cooked potatoes, you have higher rates of cancer because of this one compound that transforms during the cooking process into a harmful compound. Now if you eat raw potatoes, that's not an issue. It's just during the cooking process this chemical change happens. But you know what? In GMO potatoes, we can remove that one compound so we can cook potatoes with no cancerous outcome. Boom. GMOs to the rescue. Absolutely incredible. Love that. Love that so much that we can do things like that. Otherwise, what we've seen is we've seen GMOs, because of their natural tolerance, because of some of their some of the things that we can do with GMOs. We can make them pesticide tolerant, we can make them insect tolerant, and we can make them drought tolerant. Okay, so if we throw those 3 things together, you end up with a super crop that can basically resist being eaten by bugs, resist the fertilizers that we're using on it to make it grow better, and the insecticides that we're putting on it to help kill the insects that are trying to eat it. And so what you end up with is you end up with a healthier plant. Grows bigger, produces more acreage, more bushels per acre, so to speak, and boom. You have a way to produce food that's cleaner because it's not chewed up by insects as much. And what's important about that is that you just normally think, oh yeah, chewing up by insects, okay, that'll reduce the bushels per acre you get of a crop. And that's true, absolutely, very important. But then you start looking at some of the other downstream effects. And you start noticing, oh, well, increased amount of insect damage basically results in increased availability of sites for fungal infections to set in on that leaf, which results in increased mycotoxins, which are these fungal toxins produced by the fungus in the food. And it's these mycotoxins that go into that, remain in our food and enter our digestive systems and end up going out into our body and causing increased rates of certain cancers. So, less insect damage means less fungal infection, means less mycotoxin, means less cancer. We've already proven this with GMOs. It's already proven that they are safer, that they actually reduce cancer rates. And yet everybody's going around being terribly afraid of them because they have these flashbacks of like 1950s movies where they're talking about scientific mutations generating these horrible super organisms that are just going to kill us all and mutate us and whatever else. And it's just like, come on, that's not even close to what's going on here. What's going on is we are trying to make food safer. We're trying to make food better. We're trying to make food cheaper for everybody to enjoy. And that's really kind of the goal that we're trying to achieve here with GMOs. And we're making a lot of headway with that. Right now we can feed 20% more people with GMOs than we can with conventional organic foods. We can also see a suppression of food prices by about 10%, by at least 10% actually, by using GMOs as opposed to organic or conventional foods. So, more food to more people for cheaper. I see it as a win-win situation. Oh yeah, and that's healthier. Okay, especially considering that we can go into GMOs and we can add nutrients. So, we can look at golden rice, which is actually a type of rice that has had beta carotene added to it, which gets converted to vitamin A in your body. So you have rice that's now got vitamin A to help maintain your eyesight. So in countries or in cultures where your predominant food stock is rice, boom, you have healthier rice now. You have less malnutrition happening in those areas, in those communities. And so what do? You see healthier people with healthy eyesight. They don't develop cataracts early on in life, things of that nature. And so we just see all these different advantages, and it's so wonderful. And just it kills me to see so much hatred and fear surrounding GMOs. I just did this event at Science Central this past weekend. It's called Building with Biology, and they had a special going on. I think it was like $1 admission. And I had the opportunity to sit down at a table and interact with certain members of the public here in Fort Wayne. And these were some of their concerns, about GMO foods. I was basically at a table trying to teach people about GMO food and see what their thoughts were on the matter and trying to clear up any misconceptions that they had about GMOs. And one of those misconceptions regarded chemicals. Okay. You'll hear a couple different arguments when we talk about food. You hear the GMO versus organic argument. You hear the processed food versus the raw food argument. And at the same time, you also hear this chemical versus no chemicals argument, or the artificial additives versus the natural additives argument. And that argument always kind of bothered me, just because of my background in chemistry and biology. Just realizing that when we talk about chemicals, we're talking about anything at the macroscopic level, which is to say anything at the atomic level or higher. And so everything around us that we see is a chemical. Literally, everything. And even a lot of the stuff that we don't see, aka air, is composed of chemicals. So it always kind of rubs me the wrong way just hearing that other people don't share my sentiment about that. But I mean, I understand what they're saying. You know, they're saying chemicals are these other molecules that have been added to something or that are present in something that might be harmful. Okay, so they use chemicals in the same way that microbiologists use or I guess they use chemicals in a way that I wouldn't use, because I would use the word chemical in a much more general sense. When we're talking about microbiologists, what they do actually is they consider bacteria to be kind of a broad term for all bacteria, but then they subset it into pathogenic bacteria to be the disease-causing bacteria. Whereas normally when you talk with people, they just consider all bacteria to be bad bacteria, and that's not the case. Normally when we talk about bacteria, we're talking about bacteria that infects you, which is to say disease-causing or pathogenic bacteria. So just a little nuances there in vocabulary and terminology, but we're not going to focus on that. What we are going to focus on is chemicals, okay? And one of the things I realized in talking with people during this Building with Biology event at Science Central was that people didn't realize that chemical additives or chemical compounds in the food are really a different topic entirely from GMOs. Okay, GMOs, all we're talking about is we are talking about going into an organism, altering its genes to alter the end products, to alter the proteins that the plant makes. That's really all we're doing in GMO research. We're just altering genes to just alter the gene products. That's all we're doing. Okay. Completely separate from, artificial sweeteners, from preservatives. Completely separate topic entirely. And so we'll kind of address that. So when we talk about chemicals like those, people typically refer to artificial chemicals as being kind of bad and natural chemicals being good, right? Once again, going back to that kind of dichotomy there. Well, the thing is that there are a number of things in nature that are dangerous, right? So we can even think about these things in our daily lives. You can think of natural chemicals or natural products that we would find in the environment that are dangerous for us to consume, right? It's common knowledge that many mushrooms that you would find out in the woods are poisonous to you. That would kill you in some instances if you ate them. That's common knowledge. It's also common knowledge that certain berries that you would find in the woods would also be poisonous or dangerous for you to eat. And so when we start looking at that and start thinking about some of these compounds that we see in nature that occasionally make their way into food, we can even think about things like mercury, right? Mercury is a heavy metal. It's a very dangerous chemical that basically gathers in your system, in your body, and sits there. It sequesters in your body. Okay, there's not really a good way to get rid of heavy metals once they enter your body. So they just sit in there and accumulate throughout your life. If they reach toxic levels, you're going to start experiencing some nasty side effects. Lead was a huge problem. From using lead in pipes, in various clothing adornments, like hats. Lead can do the exact same thing, but lead is 100% natural. Additionally, we can look at other things that are a little bit more nefarious that we actually use to our own advantage. Okay, things like arsenic or cyanide, things that we might put in rat poison to try to destroy that rodent infestation that we have in the basement. Those are natural compounds, 100% natural. And yet, we don't consider that when we think about what's a harmful chemical and what's a harmless chemical. And so that's another thing that kind of frustrates me a little bit, just seeing that when people talk about chemicals, we talk about chemicals as being natural or artificial. Natural being good, artificial being bad. But really, every chemical needs evaluated individually. I guess I should have talked about that with the GMO point too. Every GMO needs to be evaluated individually. Because as a broad spectrum, GMOs appear to be harmless. But each GMO needs to pass its safety and food regulations to be able to be considered safe. Just like every single chemical needs to go through those same regulations to be considered safe. Now obviously a few slip through the cracks. Every few years you see a new preservative or new other chemical compound that was all of a sudden determined to be carcinogenic, to cause cancer. And that's unfortunate, but you know what? No system's 100%. Things slip through the cracks sometimes. Generally speaking, it's not a nefarious plot to poison everyone. I don't know where certain conspiracy theorists get some of these ideas. Kind of wacky to me. And it implies a great degree of control that has not been illustrated in any other avenue of human politics. But I digress. So the overall point is that every chemical needs evaluated individually. Just saying it's natural or just saying it's artificial has no meaning at all. What are they? What do they do? What are the little bits of research that have been done on each one of these? What are the results of those? What are they saying about the safety of those various compounds? That's what we need to be looking at. That's what we need to be stressing, is the safety here. So while some of these compounds may be harmless, or may be harmful, most of them are pretty harmless. Okay? Because if it's harmful, typically we find out pretty quick. So it's just a process. It's a scientific process, you know. Sometimes we make mistakes, and that's fine. And sometimes you have to wait 20 years to find out that something's dangerous. You know, 50 years down the line. And sometimes it takes that long. But we can say that for anything in modern society, right? So even when it comes to something like the cell phone, which has really exploded in the past 20 years, absolutely exploded, and really it's exploded in the past 15 years. Cell phones are just incredibly powerful nowadays, and the long-term effects of cell phone use, we're really not having a very good idea about that. I mean, the results that I've seen so far, various research papers, indicates that there's no harm from using cell phones. But who knows? You know, maybe a few years down the line here we'll figure out, oh, well, cell phones increase the chances of brain cancer by 0.1%. Okay. That would be an important result. Is everybody going to stop using cell phones? Probably not. But it is an important result, and it does show that it's not harmless. But the degree to which it's harmful is pretty minimal. And that's typically what we see with a lot of these compounds. With all these chemical compounds, these preservatives and things, we see, oh yeah, okay, you might get increased cancer rates at a very small rate. You know, many years down the line, you might develop a cancer. Okay, you know, 40 years from now, you might develop a cancer. Okay, as opposed to 60 years where you would normally be expected to develop that cancer. So maybe it shaved a few years off of you avoiding cancer. But I don't know. Everything needs to be evaluated individually there. Another little pet peeve of mine comes to a lot of this natural movement, right? So these detox kinds of movements, ways to cleanse your body, right, of all the toxins that you've been ingesting for the past 31 years of your life in my case. It's like, well, funny story. Your body has a couple different mechanisms to rid itself of toxins. Okay? Even just sweating is a way to rid your body of toxins. Okay? Which is why there is some utility in going to a spa or a sauna. That actually does have some real use, because we do shed some toxins by sweating. That is an absolute truth. However, when it comes to some of these teas or other like herbal compounds that you can take, kind of help, cleanse your intestines of all the toxins you've been eating, that's really kind of worthless, just from a biological perspective. Because if you think about it, you have the liver and the kidneys, which do a great job of filtering out all the toxins in your body anyway. Okay, between those two organs, you literally filter out just about everything that is bad from your blood. Now, spleen helps a little bit here and there as well. We're not going to talk about him much. But yeah, so long as you don't have cirrhosis of the liver, or as long as you're not missing a kidney, your body should be working at tip-top shape anyway. So you shouldn't even have a need for other methods to cleanse your body. It's kind of redundant. And you're really just literally peeing your money away, so to speak. Because all those toxin cleansers just run right through your body and run right back out. And what's funny is that even though these things haven't been on the market for very long, we've already proven through scientific research that these things are dangerous for you. That they actually encourage damage to some of these natural filters in your body. So whether they start breaking down the liver, some of the liver tissue, and replacing it with scar tissue, reducing the efficacy of your liver because you're taking these highly caustic compounds and washing them through your body. And look at that, we can prove that in the short amount of time that these products, these natural products, have been on the market, we've shown that they are highly dangerous. So, not a good idea to go for those things. Not even remotely. We could also talk about like ways to wash out your colon, maybe doing a colon cleanse every now and then. And once again, that's really not necessary. Maybe when you start getting up there in age, when it's time for you to do some colonoscopies, they might warrant some sort of colonic irrigation to help one thing or another. It may actually cut down on the occurrence of diverticulitis, which is essentially where the muscular walls of your large intestine right by your rectum start failing. They start inflaming, essentially, and herniating outward. And that can lead to a much higher risk of colon cancer. So in those cases, it might be useful to have that first bit of the rectum and the colon there, particularly the sigmoid region, to wash that out and try to get out some of the accumulated materials. Other than that, your body's really pretty good at washing itself out and keeping itself clean all the way through. Not to mention we have to try to preserve our gut bacteria, because those guys are very important as well along the way. Additionally, when we talk about what's natural for humans, we can talk about lifespan. All right, lifespan is a great topic to talk about just because we can track it so easily. All right, so global life expectancy right now is at 67 years. 67 years for every person on this planet as an average lifespan from birth. That's pretty incredible. All right, if we go back to the times of ancient Rome, it was 25 years. Okay, we have almost tripled our life expectancy since the times of ancient Rome. Absolutely crazy to think about. A couple thousand years right there. Then we can look at maybe a little bit later on in life, because so many infants died, it really kind of skews the numbers a little bit. So we can look at life expectancy at 10 years old. Nowadays it's 80 years worldwide. whereas back in ancient Rome, it was 48 years. Okay? So we've almost doubled that too. Life expectancy from age 10, almost double that, as opposed to almost tripling the average life expectancy from birth. If we look at the oldest individuals, nowadays, oldest person, 122 years old. Now they're not currently living, they died of almost 20 years ago. 122, that's pretty phenomenal. You compare that to Neanderthals, many tens of thousands of years ago, they reached the age of 75 years old. Okay, ancient humans around the time that Neanderthals were around. So we've increased that by just about 50 years. That's pretty phenomenal. Really is. Okay, and so what's natural for us is to only live, average life expectancy, it's natural for us to only live to about 25 years old. Okay. Once again, that's average. A lot of infants die. But still, even beyond that, we see that once you hit age 10, it was natural for you to die by age 50. Okay. That was the average. And nowadays here in the US, it's 80 years old. All right. Absolutely crazy to think about. So why is that? This natural state of humans is to die so young. And yet we're living so much longer now. Well, a lot of it comes down to basic stuff like basic sanitation, hygiene, washing your hands, having clean water, clean food, all this stuff, because all those different sources were huge ways for infections to set in. Huge sources of bacteria and parasites to enter into your body through the food and the water and the environment that you were in. And nowadays we've cut down those rates of infection and infestation. And so we're living a lot longer just because we're making ourselves so much healthier and keeping out all those nasty things. We even go on to talk about the domestication of crops. Crops were domesticated 11,000 years ago. Sorry, longer than that. It was from 10,000 BC and on that we really started domesticating crops like crazy. So we would take plants that we saw in the wild and selectively breed them so we could easily get a lot of food from them in a short amount of time, and so they were very easily to take and plant in other places and to treat as an actual crop. So we actually shaped the evolution of different plants. A number of these different plants that we domesticated, things like rice, corn, soybeans, green beans, peas, wheat, potatoes, turnips, all these things look a little similar to their original native counterparts, but they're all so much different now. So much different from their original native state, because we've selectively bred them to select for certain characteristics. It was basically using GMOs before we could do GMOs. Okay, it was artificial selection of crops because we were selecting it. So we shaped the evolution of these crops, so we domesticated them. So most of the crops that we grow right now and most of the foods that we eat are unnatural. We did that. We domesticated them. They did not grow in the wild on their own. We made them. So even just looking at vague food perspective, food is unnatural. Then we can talk about cooking food, right? Which has been done for about the past 1.8 million years in humans. And what was nice about that was that it made food easier to chew and digest. And that was great. And so we could actually get more nutrients from certain foods. If we look at cooking wheat and potatoes, we can get 30% more energy from those things now. Because we're cooking them. We're kind of breaking them down a little bit before having them, before ingesting them. Eggs, we get a crazy amount more energy from eggs. We can get 78% more energy from eggs just by cooking it. It's crazy to think about. When it comes to meat, It was great to cook meat because it made it have a lot of traction in our mouth. So it wasn't just like chewing gum, which is kind of what raw meat is like, which is why I can't stand raw steak. That's just disgusting to me. Yeah, it's just bleeding and it's just gummy and it's disgusting. But cooking that meat really helped it give traction so we can chew it easily. Microwaves are, of course, a modern invention which can cook meat or cook anything very, very quickly. And some people might be a little afraid of it. When it first came out, as far as conventionally at the home level, it's in the 1960s, late 1960s, and microwaves were scary to people because, like, oh my gosh, you're putting radiation in your food? That's crazy. Why would you want to eat that? But then we started looking at it and we're like, well, microwaves are kind of like infrared waves, which infrared waves is how we cook things in the oven. So it's really no different. It just has a longer wavelength, so we call it microwaves. Longer wavelength than infrared, but it still transfers that heat energy to the food, just like an oven would. Okay? It's just done a little differently because we're exciting the material and having it emit these microwaves into our food. So completely safe. It's a great way to cook food. Now, obviously we can look at some other animals that have been domesticated along the way. Most notably dogs, okay, which have been domesticated for the past 11,000 years from wolves. And along that time, they actually evolved to be tolerant of gluten and lactose, because we also became tolerant of lactose, and we were already tolerant to gluten, so that wasn't an issue. So it became important for dogs as our human companions through this domestication procedure from wolves. Became important for dogs to be able to live off of some of the things that humans were growing, which is to say crops, which is to say wheat. So wheat was a significant component in the food that we fed our dogs, and still is, and it shaped their evolution. And then milk was also important to help give dogs because we were drinking it ourselves. And that's how we became lactose tolerant into adulthood. Whereas any other primate, any other mammal, becomes lactose intolerant as soon as it stops nursing. So just drinking milk, just the act of drinking milk is unnatural. So, kind of interesting, just trying to put some things in perspective there for you. Just kind of trying to show you that what's natural is for humans to live a very short, miserable life and not live a long, happy life. That's what natural is all about. But when we have science technology, that's what's going to help us reach that goal of living a long, happy life. And the more that we fear these things, fear these new things, these new products of science and technology, the more we resist, actually work against our own interests. Because everybody wants to live a longer life. Everybody wants to be happier, more comfortable. And by embracing science, we can take that to that next step. So, try to ignore these other people that are going around with these scare tactics and anti-science rhetoric, pseudoscience that they're wielding around and saying chemicals are bad and natural organic detoxing is good and all these things. Just ignore those people. Listen to the scientists. They know what they're doing. So, thank you for joining us for this show. My name is Chris Rex. If you want to find any of our episodes, you can look up Based on Facts on Facebook and YouTube. Otherwise, thank you for listening and have a great day.